Hi, I'm Caroline.
And I'm Megan.
And this is the Songwriter Diaries,
a podcast by songwriters for songwriters.
Hello.
Hello. How's it going?
It's amazing because today we have Annie Kemble on the podcast. Absolutely incredible performer, songwriter, human being. Can you just start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got started singing and writing music?
Yeah, so I am a singer, a songwriter. I kind of wrote all my life, but didn't really share much of it. And then I ended up going to college at the School for Music Vocations in Creston, Iowa. And there I was kind of like fully submerged into the music world. And I didn't really do a ton of writing there either. It was more just like learning like the basis of music and lots of theory and like some arranging and stuff, but not a ton of actual like writing. But then after I graduated, I kind of felt like I needed to like start doing that more just because I was doing a lot of like cover gigs and doing a ton of singing other people's music, and which I love because I studied jazz. And so I did so much like jazz standard singing. And it was like, okay, if I want to do music, I kind of feel like I need to have something to say and like figure out what my message is and stuff. So yeah, after I graduated, which is like 5 years ago now, no, 3, 4. I don't know what time is. It's moving forward all the time. But,
yep.
Yeah. So after I graduated, I was like, let's do it. And then I released my first like a short album last year. So yeah.
Nice. Yep. Who would you say are some of your musical influences?
I feel like I have so many. I think growing up, I listened to a lot of like 80s rock and stuff. That's kind of like, I feel like I have like songwriting influences and then I have like singing influences, and sometimes they cross over, but I feel like singing wise, I mean, I listen to a lot of like 80s rock, like Heart and stuff, and any like female singer, like in general, I love. But songwriting wise, I think it's funny because I think I like don't notice who I like really drew inspiration from until I'm like really thinking about stuff I've written, and I'm like, oh yeah, like this sounds exactly like something Cher would write, like that's, or Cher's writers would write, or whoever wrote. But Cher was a big one for me, and I realized that like this last album I've been working on, I'm like, okay, this sounds just like burlesque stuff, and having to pull up like burlesque and like play it in front of like the musicians. I'm like, so this is the vibe. Unfortunately, like, what the hell is this? But anyway, so yeah, Cher's a big one. Also, as a performer, and like she's so like stylistically cool. Like she's just like my absolute queen of my life. Otherwise, I mean, I listened to a lot of like Adele was a huge one, singing wise and songwriting, and Duffy was another really big one for me. Amy Winehouse, obviously, queen of my life. Yeah, I think
you are Amy Winehouse.
I love her. I love her truly. She was like it's funny because I feel like she covered some songs that were like iconic that I didn't know were covers, but were so iconic already. Like there's like Donny Hathaway stuff, and I'm like, this is an Amy Winehouse song. And I'm like, damn. Yeah. That makes you feel young again though. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh,
yeah. I'm like, anything that Amy Winehouse says is hers. It's hers. Yeah, everything she says or sings is Amy Winehouse.
She really does make it her own. Yeah. It's in such a cool way. Yeah. Love her. I hope that answered your question. I feel like that was all over the place.
No, that was literally perfect. And I totally like, even like just looking at you like through the video screen, like your vibe, like total like Amy Winehouse vibes.
Yeah. I love her. And I think for a lot of my life, it kind of like worried me because I felt like I was so like, I love her 1,000%. And I feel so like I mean, I think a lot of people get that with her because she's so like vulnerable in her music. That it's like, I feel like connected to this woman. And I think, I don't know, I just have always felt so like intertwined with her, but it scared me for a lot of my like young life. Not scared me, but it like, I didn't want to feel like I was copying her, or like, you know what I mean? It was like, I was basing a lot of my like voice around her and a lot of like my look and stuff. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to be like an Amy Winehouse copy. But I think that's a good thing because I think she's amazing. So whatever.
Yeah. And finding your own voice through that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
yeah, she's just a vessel for you.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Exactly. I think like her jazz connection and like me going to school and like studying jazz too was like a big part of that kind of like influence and like why I am very similar. I mean, obviously she's like the mega queen, but why I'm like so drawn to her is she's just the jazz influence and stuff is so interesting and cool.
Yeah, I love that, you know, that you identify so heavily with jazz because we haven't had a lot of jazz artists on the podcast. Mm-hmm. So I'm so excited to have you on.
Yay. Yeah, I feel kind of weird being like, oh, I'm a jazz singer. Just because like the jazz world can be so like, oh, that's not jazz sometimes. And I feel like it's mainly some of the people that are like trying to like that, you know what, it's like, what is jazz? Like that's the point, is that jazz is like pretty much anything. It's just like you're making something in the moment and like improvising is like the point of jazz. And that's why I think I'm so drawn to jazz, because it's like every time I say jazz, I think I'm talking about my friend who Caroline knows jazz.
Yes.
My best girl jazz.
It's meant to be. It's full circle.
I know. It's so weird that my friend is named Jazz too, which is so funny. But yeah, jazz is like for everyone. And I think it's so annoying when people are like, oh, this isn't jazz. Like because it's like, first of all, white people doing jazz is not jazz. Like, you know, if jazz is anything, it's definitely not white person stuff. Okay. But I think in a smaller area, there can be a little bit of elitism. So I think it's fun to like take stuff and like take any kind of music and fuck with it and be like, okay, I'm improvising. I'm doing this in like a maybe jazz influenced way. But I did like an interview and they put like jazz musician on it. And I was just like, my professors in college are probably just laughing at this, you know, because I feel like, I don't know, there's such a weird narrative around jazz and like being a jazz musician and stuff. And it's like, I mean, I studied it. I feel like I could be considered that, but it's just weird. I don't know. Genres are weird.
So I was going to ask, because did you always know you wanted to study jazz? Like, when did you kind of figure out what you wanted to do in terms of college and a career and all that?
Yeah. So this is actually funny. I don't know if I've like said this on anything yet, but I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Honestly, like I was such a mess in high school and younger. I was like totally a crazy person. And I think that if anyone is watching this, went to high school with me, they'd be like, fuck yeah, that girl was crazy. Because I was just like partying and I just had no like, I didn't really, I sang a lot in high school and I was like doing a few like gigs here and there. And I had played a little bit with a guitarist who had like a heavy jazz influence. And he was showing me a lot of like cool music and being like, you should learn this and you should learn this. And so I was kind of like stepping into the jazz world. I really liked Nina Simone a lot. And like I had heard a little bit of like Billie Holiday. But I didn't have a ton of like jazz influence. And then I actually I got detained at Walmart for shoplifting when I was like a senior in high school. I just graduated from high school and I got in so much trouble. I was 17, so I didn't get arrested, but I got detained, which is funnier, I think. And my friend that was with me got arrested because she was 18. And so my punishment, my mom was so obviously, she was like, why couldn't you just steal from our small town? Because my hometown is really small. And so we would always go to like the big, like we'd go to Des Moines to like shoplift and do like crazy children things, like whatever. I was just disruptive. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so I get detained at Walmart. My mom's like, I was supposed to go to Lollapalooza, like that at the end of that summer as like I graduated from high school and whatever. And I had no plans to go to college. Like I really was like, I'm just going to work at McDonald's and maybe be on crack. I don't know. Like I had just had really, it's crazy. Like how you imagine your life. And then it's like totally different. I don't know. But anyway. And so then my mom was like, you're not going to Lollapalooza. You're going to this. I had gotten like a scholarship to go to this vocal jazz camp at SWIC. And I was like, no fucking way am I going to that. Because it was the same week as Lollapalooza. My mom's like, okay, so you're not going to Lollapalooza and you're going to go to this jazz camp. And I was like, no, like my world came crashing down at the time. But then I went against my will. And it was like the best thing that has ever happened to me, truly, because then I like met all the instructors there and stuff were like, what are you doing? Like, you should be doing music. This is for you. And I felt like I couldn't because I didn't know how to read music at that time. But I just had like a lot of like musical intuition and like, I just sang a lot. So I knew kind of how to sing and whatever. But they convinced me to join the music program. I had thoughts of maybe like going to SWIC previous to like this whole situation because it was just close. And like, I was like, maybe I'll just be a teacher, go for like early childhood education or something. Cause I love kids, but yeah, I wasn't really feeling it until I went and they convinced me to be a music major. So then from then on, it was like, I had no idea it was a jazz school either. I was just like, okay, this is just a place. It's like kind of a weird, like it's in the middle of nowhere. And it's like, I had no idea what I was kind of like getting myself into, which I think is like a common theme in my life. Like I'm kind of just like doing stuff. And then it's like, oh, this is wild. I like don't research anything. Yeah. One thing about me, I'm not going to look it up, which is not good, but it's okay. Just blindly going into things. But I mean, it's probably like the best case scenario for me because they have it's called like the fundamental year, where they have like classes for people that have never read music and stuff. And so it was just like really totally like from the ground up. And I mean, I left that school, like I took like studio recording classes, did tons of arranging. Like I led vocal jazz groups and choirs and stuff. And I was in so many vocal jazz groups there, which also embarrassing, but it did really like help me like learn how to control my voice a lot. And like I had no idea that you can like control your vibrato and stuff, like, you know what I mean, like little things like that. I'm like, oh, I'm just like like on my Amy Winehouse shit, and then they're like, no girl, so you need to blend. And I'm like, okay, what's that? Which really, I mean, and now I notice like in the studio and stuff, I'm like, oh, like this is, I can do this because of vocal jazz. So shout out to my vocal jazz people out there, recovering vocal jazzers.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So what does your songwriting process look like?
Oh man. So I feel like I write differently like every time. I think usually, I don't know. That's the thing that I think I struggled with for a long time too, was like that it doesn't like look the same every time. And it's usually like the songs I write are all like very different. And I was like, I have to be one thing. I have to figure it out. I have to have like a cohesive process. But I don't think that's how it works actually, because you can just do whatever you want, I think. Maybe. I don't know. But so usually, I mean, sometimes I start with like a concept, like I'll hear something, be like, oh, that's interesting. And then I'll just start like writing like poetry essentially about it. And then I'll come back to it later if I have like a chord progression that I like or something. But most of the time more than that, I would say usually I'm like, I start with like a melody without any chords or anything. And I just like hear a melody in my head. And then I sort of like make words around the melody, but they're not like any real words. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of like and then it's like, then you can like fill it in a way, which I feel like is so weird. And when people if they hear me in my house, they're like, what the fuck is she doing? So I'm like, But sometimes I do that weird stuff. I don't know. It's like so different every time. Sometimes I'll like watch a movie and then it'll be like something in the movie that I like. And then I'm like doing a lot of like heavy research about it. And it's like something I don't really know about. And then I'm like on the internet reading about it. Which is fun because I think I've like collected a lot of like random information that way about things. But I have like that portion of my writing, which is like research based and like stylistically like a certain thing. And then I have like my shit when I'm like basically journaling through music and I'm like, don't let me like shit like that, you know? That's more just like emotionally based.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that I think like just kind of like comes out more naturally and is like harder. I mean, I don't share a ton of that stuff. So yet, but might be someday, you know, when I die and then they steal my stuff and show it to people. No, I'll put it out someday, but
they open a museum.
When it's in a music museum. Yeah.
I can haunt it.
So you're, I love it. So you're recording your first full length album right now. Can you walk us through the process of recording and provide any advice for those who are looking to record their first full length project?
Ooh, yeah. So I think my kind of like process has looked like writing as much like material as I can, kind of like I was in before like getting in the studio at all. For me, I'm like very like calculated about things and I have to be like very efficient or else I'm like I can't do it. Like it stresses me out. I think that's like the Virgo in me. But, and also like with studio time, like I feel like when, you know, you only have so much time, I don't want to waste a second of it. Although someday, like I would love to just be like, oh, I have an idea. I'm just going to stop in the studio. Like, let's just pop in and like just what comes out. Like when I have money, that would be great. But that's not quite like the situation right now. So I think, yeah, I mean, since I like dropped the last project, I've been like, was just writing and like kind of just collecting all my demos and making a ton of demos of things and like fleshing a million things out and then kind of just like picking my favorites and like what would kind of fit together in a way. I don't know. The most interesting part to me is like getting all these ideas and being like, I don't really know what this is going to be about. Like I had like a base, sort of like a foundation for the album, and I had like certain key songs that were like, okay, this feels like it fits together. This feels like it fits together. But it kind of like took shape on its own in like kind of a crazy way. And I don't know, I'm just like really like spiritual about things and like kind of like what did it do? Like very like Rick Rubin about stuff. Like, and me and Jazz talk about like Rick Rubin and like this spiritual kind of like crazy person way to think about music a lot. And she's very like calculated. Jazz actually co-wrote like probably two of the songs. Okay, one of the songs we co-wrote together, which was new for me on this album. I haven't done much co-writing before. Just because it's kind of hard to find someone that you really like mesh with well. Especially like in songwriting. It's like it's a like vulnerable process. And it's like can be embarrassing because it's like, here's this idea and you don't love me anymore. And it's like, that's kind of embarrassing, you know, to share. So you gotta But Jazz and I are so like such good friends that it's like there's no ego involved. I think that's the most important part. But anyways, so she co-wrote one. She wrote the lyrics for another one, and I wrote everything else basically. And then so that was an interesting part that came later in like the picking songs process. But yeah, anyway, I would say my advice is kind of like, you know, throw as much material down as you like want to and can, and then choose kind of like step out of like your ego in a way and be like, okay, what is going to make the most sense for me right now? At least if you're trying to accomplish like what I'm kind of trying to accomplish, which is just like being able to do music like professionally
Mm-hmm.
and like reach a bigger audience,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, is being like, okay, what are
Yeah.
people gonna like? I would love to make an album that's all just like ballad, sad songs, because that's my jam. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's like, okay, what's gonna like perform best live? Because I want to do like a tour and I want to, have something fun for people to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, kind of just having like an idea of like what your point, like what your reason is for doing an album, like what you want people to feel too, is I think like important. And then having just like
Yeah.
a cohesive like plan of like, I think once I got in the studio, every day was like, we did like it was like a week and a day of just like straight in the studio. So we did like 9 a.m. to like sometimes like 7, 8 p.m., which was crazy, but like so fun. And it was like a
Mm-hmm.
total breakaway from like my regular waitressing, nannying life, which was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like,
Love.
yeah, it was fun. But like when I got in there, it was like, we're trying to get as much done as we can. And it's kind of like a marathon. But it was like,
Yeah.
we did like drums and bass tracking together. And so I don't know, like ideally I would love to have like the whole band in there at the same time, but that's kind of like not. You recorded at Golden Bear, right, Caroline?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I thought you did. Cause your single was there, which was a sleigh.
Mm-hmm.
Big sleigh.
Oh, thanks.
Slay.
But yeah, it's a pretty small studio, so it's kind of just like you have to do drums and bass together and then kind of add on the other instruments, which has its like pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like I was like just trying to get across the point that like every song has its own like, I hate the word vibe and I use it so much, but I'm gonna use it again. It has its own vibe. It has its own like, I want people to feel like they're there, and like sometimes it's like, okay, I had this blues song that's like, okay, you're doing great on the drums. I love how much you're playing. You're killing it. But I need you to imagine that you're like an old man and you're like on the last song of your set and it's midnight and you're drunk and your wife is divorcing you. Like, I need you to like, almost be like a
Yep.
character in some ways.
Whoa.
To like,
hmm
you need to be going through it, babe. So
This
whether
poor
or
guy,
not
you really
yeah,
put him through
wow.
you gotta, I feel like, and they're like, this girl is crazy, but I think that's kind of
Yeah.
like the fun part about it is like, so a lot of the
Mhm.
music I like is like just because it has a certain like effect on me, or like, like you're playing it
Yeah.
because it sets the mood in a way, and like so that's kind of what I was trying to focus on
Mhm.
with every song on this album is like so different. It's like kind of crazy how like much it like bops around, which is Dive Bar is kind of like that too, my last
Yeah.
project, but this one goes like a step further in a cool way. But anyway, I hope that answered your question. I feel like I just rambled, but I feel like having an idea.
Yes.
I feel like a lot of for me is like doing like vision boarding stuff. I'm like on Pinterest actively, like getting my little pictures for every song.
Yeah.
I'm like showing the band, this is what we're doing here. And they're like, what the fuck is that? um, and yeah, I think at least for me, I'm like a very big like album person. Like I really love albums that you can listen to front to back and that have sort of like a theme and like a cohesive like conceptual idea. So that was kind of, it's important for me to do that. But if you're just like throwing shit together, like I think there's like no rules also, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which is the
That's
coolest
the
thing.
beauty of it.
Yeah. You can do whatever you want.
So
No, I think you totally answered that brilliantly.
yeah.
Thank you. Good.
For
Love
your musicians, do you
Mhm.
play with them live too? Like, did you have the same group of musicians that you play with live in the studio, or did you have different people?
So this album we kind of I had the guitarist that I play with. So it's interesting because I have like played with bands. I've been in bands and like felt really like I have to play with these people and I am in this band and this and this. And it kind of like, I love that because it's like you're like a team in some ways. But I think that after like releasing my last album and stuff, I'm like, okay, I think I want to just kind of like hire out musicians for certain things and like just have, like players that I really love like being around. And I work a lot with a band called Birdie Pie. And they're their own band without me, which is great too. But they lean more towards like 70s like psychedelic rock, which I love like leaning into with them. And I had a couple of the players from that band on this album. I actually had a couple of those guys do like background vocals on a couple things. And the guitarist played
that's so
on
fun.
the album. Steven is so talented and he rocks. And they're all just like the sweetest guys in general. And I just like, they respect me so much, which is like, can be hard to come by in the music industry.
Mhm.
People that just like, especially being a woman in the music industry and like, I don't know, it feels like you just have to be 10 times louder. You have to be, and I'm a white woman. Like, I can't even imagine like what else is going on, you know? It's just, it's shitty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have those guys and
Yeah.
I love them and they're like, ooh. Like if I go on a tour, I would love to tour with them because they all have like regular jobs and they're just like kind of vibing and this is like their fun thing to do. And they're all so talented. Anyway, and then I have kind of this other group of musicians that I have started to work with. They're called A Mind at Large, and this guy named Ryan Jeter is kind of like in charge of it. He did a lot of stuff for like Youth Orchestra. If you guys have ever heard of that, it's kind of like older Des Moines stuff. But Ryan is like a horn player, and there's a couple of horn players in that group, and they lean more towards like the jazz side of things. And so they play a couple of my songs live as well, and I joined them for a couple of things, and I'm doing a couple shows with them later this summer. But so I had mostly those guys playing on my album just because they're like friends with Brian, the guy who engineered and produced the album. And so it's kind of like my pals coming in kind of thing. And like, I don't know. I think that's the cool thing is like, I worried a lot about like people getting their feelings hurt if I don't ask them. But I don't think that is like happening. I think that people are just like, okay, we just want it to be made, which is nice. I hope. I mean, I don't like mean to offend anyone. It's kind of just like comes to a point where it's like, okay, this just has to get done. So let's just like do it. And who's going to do it most efficiently too.
Yeah.
So yeah, part of it is kind of like Brian has his people that he really likes to work with. And so I'm like, okay, you let's get your people. And Brian ended up drumming on a lot of actually all of the songs he plays drums on. So that was really nice too. Financially. Awesome. So yeah, so it's kind of like a mismatched group. But it's kind of fun that way. And everybody is like, has like really good energy and is like excited about the project, which is like really cool. Cause I feel like you can feel that in an album and I don't know, maybe I'm just, once again, I'm like about things, but, yeah, I had this pianist actually on the album that plays with, oh my God, I got a freaking frog in my throat. Sorry. Good Lord. I had, this pianist come play actually on the album who I played with him at one show. And wasn't really sure of like, I knew he was good, but I didn't really know like what he would be into or how much he wanted to play on stuff. And then I worked with this guy at this like antiques and collective store here in Des Moines. And so I knew him as a person before I knew him as a musician. We didn't know that the other person was a musician. We were just like pricing shit together. And he came and played and he's like also this guy on earth. His name's Tanner Taylor and he's so good at piano. And it's funny because I have like this concept of what the songs are going to sound like. And I had played a lot of them live with the Brady Pie guys. So I kind of knew how they played it and whatever and how my demo sounded. And then Tanner kind of came in and laid down keys on stuff. And like my soul like truly left my body when he was playing. Like it was like, what the like I had no idea how good like how much like it's like giving like Von Mar like walking through the mall but like in the 70s like you're in Las Vegas and you're in like the hotel like elevator music in some ways. It's like very loud.
I love that.
And so he added this whole new like
iconic.
Yeah, it's so fun. He added that whole new feeling to it, which is like so fun and is like I was like kind of getting sick of some of the songs because I've like heard them forever, and I'm like, geez, let's just like, I'm just sick of it.
Mm-hmm.
But he kind of like breathed like a whole new life into things. So like making music and recording albums and stuff is like working with musicians and hearing like their take on what I wrote. It's like not mine anymore. You know what I mean? It's like I did kind of write this, but like you also wrote it because you're like ripping. He was like doing like Liberace type stuff on one song, and like I was just like, girl. And then he's like, okay, see you later. I'm like, what the fuck? Tanner. Anyway, so it's crazy.
You're like, you're leaving after that?
Yeah, like
take a bow. Take a bow.
I feel like I should like kiss your feet or something.
So you're based out of Des Moines, Iowa.
Yes, I am.
And what's the vibe out there? What do you like? What do you dislike about the Des Moines music scene? Because I know it's like everybody kind of knows everybody, and I love that vibe.
Yeah. I think that it's kind of like the perfect, well, the thing is about Des Moines, love it so much, truly. But the thing that sucks about it right now is that like a lot of our venues have closed, where like people who don't have a big audience can start have been closing. And that is a huge bummer for Des Moines. Like Gaslamp just closed. Vaudeville Muse is closed. There's a ton of stuff that
Gaslamp closed?
Yeah, they just had their last like performance like last weekend. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, that's so sad.
It's sad. I know.
That's wild.
And that was like kind of one of the last places. I mean, there's still places for sure that you can like play. But like that was like one of the last kind of like actual like venues that's not just a bar for it with a stage for musicians to play. And so that's kind of like my beef with Des Moines right now is, I mean, I luckily like, I've been working here in Des Moines for like years now. So I've played at these places and I've like kind of worked my way up in a way. And so I have been like the Woolies or like like higher, like whatever, bigger venues. But it's like, if someone was going to start out, like I didn't, you don't start out playing at big venues. So it's like, I don't know. I think that Des Moines could be, it was for me a great place to like start out and to start playing and like kind of get my feet wet with things. But like, I don't know. It makes me a little sad for the future. I hope that there's like XBK and stuff, and there's a few other like little places for people to play. But I just think about like, I don't like being a young musician and being like, where do you play at here anymore? I'm hoping for like more opportunities here in the future and like open mics and stuff. I feel like there's not a ton of open mics here. There's a few. There's one at like Slow Down Coffee.
I don't know of any.
Yeah, there's a couple, but there's none that are like, I don't, and it's also kind of like Des Moines isn't really somewhere where like a talent scout is going to be at an open mic. So it's kind of more just like experience and like getting used to being in front of an audience is like what you would be doing here. But I think there are a lot of people that are really passionate about music here and that like appreciate music a lot and come out to shows. And so that is like a great part about Des Moines is that I feel like I have like kind of, there's a lot of people that come to stuff and that, I don't know, it's like, it's such a community based element to Des Moines, which is really great. So yeah, there's pros and cons to everything, but I think that there are like a lot of opportunities for young musicians and young like jazz musicians to play here. I don't know how many opportunities there are for like original music, especially paying opportunities. Like it's very, very much like 3-hour gigs of cover things here. Which I think that's everywhere. I mean, I know like Nashville, there's a lot of like cover band stuff happening. But yeah, I don't know. I just would love to see like more opportunities for like original music around. And there are, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, I see here, it's like I play a song that to me I have played. I mean, I have several songs that I used to play all the time that I'm like, I am so sick of this song because it's so just like overdone and like, but it's like
Yeah.
people that aren't necessarily artists, which is Des Moines a lot. There's not a ton. It's definitely more like more populated by people who are not artists than artists. You know, like it's not a big art city.
Mhm.
It's bigger in like insurance and like stuff like that. So, but it's like there's this like element of like musicians being background music for like for their party or like something that is like easily digestible for them, and it's not necessarily like about celebrating the music itself, which is fine.
Mhm.
And if it like pays and you can like do it without like feeling like mentally drained, then I love that for you. But I did that for a while and it kind of burnt me out in like a big way. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's
Big
like the
time.
worst
Yeah.
feeling.
It sucks.
Is
Mhm.
like
It's the
you're like
worst.
singing
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
heart out and like playing these songs that you wrote and worked really hard on, and it's like then you get like the server comes over at the restaurant that you're singing at and they're like, hey, can you turn down actually, like, you know, we're kind of like, you know, and it's
Oh,
Mhm.
definitely, and you have to just be like, yeah, for sure, like whatever, but it's just like on the inside you're like,
Yeah.
because you're not even loud in the first place, you know. It's like basically now
yeah.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
doing it without a mic, so it's that's the hard part,
Mhm.
I think, is like just getting thick skin that way here, especially, and I'm sure everywhere else too. But
Big time.
yeah,
Yeah. In Nashville, it's like there are so many writers around, so much original music, but you're not
yeah,
getting paid for it.
right,
So it's
right,
like, okay. And even
Yeah.
the cover bands are mostly tips because it's so
mm,
concentrated here. And
yeah,
like there's
Mhm.
so much talent that
yeah,
even if you're like playing in a cover band, depending on where you are, you're just getting tips.
Yeah.
right,
It's hard to find a place that will pay even for cover songs. And if you're just doing originals, no. Like you can't play your originals on Broadway. Drunk people don't
right.
want to hear
Yeah.
it. They like
No,
they don't
Yeah.
want to hear it.
they
They want
don't.
to hear Wagon Wheel for the 500th time.
Literally,
That's what they want to hear.
Yeah. Oh
literally,
dear God.
so wild.
Horrible.
It's like
Yeah.
people just want something that is like comfortable. They want to be like comfortable. They don't want to be like have to think
Hmm.
about it. You know, which whatever. Like go off
Yeah.
9 to 5s, but like I just can't.
Yeah. So this might be a hard question for you, Annie.
Okay.
If you could share a bill with any three artists, dead or alive, who would you choose?
Oh wow. Hmm. Well, I feel like holy shit. Who would I pick? I feel like my bill would probably be like a show that people would not. I don't know. It'd be so all over the place that they'd be like, "Who put this fucking bill together?" But I think I would probably pick like if I had to pick like Leonard Cohen because I would just like absolutely
Oh.
Mm,
can't wait to see him perform live. I think I would
mm.
pick like Pink Floyd. I am a
Ooh.
Pink Floyd fan and their songwriting and like OG Pink Floyd, I think, with their like original singer
Yeah.
before he
Yeah.
went loco. And then
Mm.
oh my God, who would be my third? Honestly, like I am a huge Beyonce fan. Huge Beyonce fan. I think probably Beyonce as well. That's like the most insane lineup ever.
Yes.
Wow.
I
Oh,
like have always just been so obsessed with her as well. So I think I'm gonna stick
she
with that.
Love.
just played here last night,
Oh, really?
and I didn't go. I was debating, but I was so tired, and the tickets were like $140
So
without
expensive.
fees and drinks.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it's supposed to rain outside, and it's at the
Mhm.
stadium. I was like, I don't have the energy to dance to Beyonce all night. I'm like, I
No.
want to be in bed.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I still feel
I'm not-
guilty about it. I'm like,
I feel like sometimes with those big arena concerts though, I'm like not as into that. I don't know. I like
Mhm.
go
Yeah,
off
I'm-
doing
Yeah.
that stuff and I would love to do that someday, but it's like just so like that is for like going with your friends and dancing totally 1,000% and not
yeah.
you
Yeah.
can really see the performer, like, you know what I mean? It's like, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's a
Yeah.
different vibe than like being in a
Mhm.
smaller, more intimate space. So I don't know.
Yeah, like I saw Greta Van Fleet, super random
Yeah,
reference, but I honestly love them. They're so good.
they're
But I
so
saw
good.
them at like a smaller venue in Denver in like
Mhm.
2018,
Okay.
and it was like so good, so
Yeah.
good. And then like 3 or 4 years later I saw them at Red Rocks, like
Oh, yeah.
10,000 person venue.
Yeah.
And it was still a great show, but it did not compare to the one that I saw in
Yeah.
the smaller venue, where it's just
Right.
like we were close to the stage, like they were so, it was like we were all like smooshed together. It was like so cool.
Yes.
So yeah, I totally agree. Big venues are cool and they have their moment, but I
Hmm.
definitely prefer smaller ones.
I
Yeah,
agree.
same.
It's a lot more intimate and like, I don't know. I think I prefer like smaller venue things too, just because then I feel like I'm like connecting with the people actually.
Yeah.
And I don't know,
Yeah.
those big venues are like
Yeah.
more for like the production and like the stage stuff and the dancing and all that is so cool and I love it. But I don't know, there's like
Hmm.
pros to both. I just have like I hate honestly, I
Hmm.
hate being in like a big audience. That is not for me. I'm like I get so anxious
Yeah.
around that many people for I don't know, it's
Yeah.
like I'm just not really
Hmm.
I like small groups of people as a person in general.
Yeah.
And so when I'm
Yeah.
around people, I'm just like,
Yes.
where's the exit at?
Hmm.
Ah,
Literally.
yeah.
Like,
I'm ready to
no.
run, babe.
Totally.
Got my shoes on. Yeah.
It's come to that time where we ask our last question, which is
Ooh.
crazy. And that question is, why do you write songs?
Ooh. That's a banger question. I I think that I write songs because um just because I feel like I can't not write songs, I guess. I feel like it's just like a part of
Hmm.
me and like my creativity and I'm a very like creative person and I like to make art in like all forms and I think that songwriting for me is like has been a huge um like emotional release as well as like just a creative like it's just fun to do. I have a lot of fun doing it and it's sort of like playing and making things up. I love lying,
Hmm.
so I think that's another reason. I'm just kind of like sometimes I get to just lie and embellish the truth. And I also really love um I guess this isn't why I write songs because usually I just write them for me. But I think I really love to hear like what people connect to as well. And like when I hear that someone
Hmm.
like connected with something or something like moved them or they felt any emotion really like because of my songs, that's like, oh yeah, okay, this is really that's just like really neat to hear and that makes me want to write more. So that's kind of um yeah. I hope that answered it. I don't know. I feel like I've it's just so fun. I just like love to play and I love to it's like a childlike thing sometimes. Like I'm all about that inner child
Hmm.
kind of thing with the drama and the the stuff. And I like to I don't know, it's kind of like I don't think I let myself be creative for a lot of my life in fear of like what people thought of me. And so now I think it's kind of like bubbling
Hmm.
over. Once you like start, it's like it's
Hmm.
happening now and I can't really like stop it. So I think that's kind of why.
So we end every episode with the song that you sent. So can you just give a little background on Your Love is Profound?
Yeah. So Your Love is Profound was the first single off of my album that's coming out hopefully in like October-ish. I put it out last month and we had a video and stuff for it, which was really fun. That song actually is really funny because I told Jazz actually, like, oh, Your Love is Profound is going to be the single, and she had never heard it. And she was like, what is that song about? And I'm like, you'll just hear it. You'll hear it, whatever. And I showed it to her, and she's like, I thought this song was going to be like, your love is profound, like a like ballady, like, you know, that's like a big thing to say. Like profound is like a big word, and like your love, you know, it's like, ooh, she was like imagining like an Adele kind of thing. But this song is actually about just like literally boinking somebody and being dramatic about it, I think. And so that's
I
what
love that.
Incredible.
and I think like I wrote the song, it's like literally 2 chords. I mean, like the chorus goes to a different chord, but it's like, it's a very simple song. It's more about like the groove, which is really interesting. And Birdie Pie played on this one in the studio, and they added a lot to this song. And the bridge, we went to this like halftime breakdown thing, which was like more of a psychedelic kind of like Pink Floyd inspired thing. And so it was kind of like the blending of bossa nova and like 70s psychedelic rock in a fun way, which I really love. But yeah, it's kind of like about being like, oh, that was crazy, and now I can't even like explain it. And so that's kind of what that song is about. Like it's so like profound that I can't even like explain it. So sorry, Grandma.
I love that.
Yeah. And it's so good. It's so good. And the video, so good.
Thank you. It was really fun.
Amazing.
I really like the music video aspect of things. And yeah, I'm going to have another single probably at the end of, probably beginning of August. That has a video as well. That love. And it's really fun. It's a good one. I'm excited. But yeah, that's about it. About Your Love is Profound. And thanks for listening to it, you guys. I appreciate it.
This is Your Love is Profound by Annie Kemble.
Softness, my intensity, running through you, right back into me. Show me the marks your love can leave. I want all your loving, man, that shit is heavenly. I'm not religious, but now I think I could be. Something about you makes me want to believe. Is it in the listening, in between the sound? Only an eternity, I'm gonna need you around. Or is it in the summertime, the light right before the sun goes down? You feel my divinity, your love is profound. Your love is profound. I feel immortal when you are touching me. I can't find the words to describe this feeling. Something about you, baby, just sets me free. Is it in the listening, the space between the sound? Only an eternity, I'm gonna need you around. Or is it in the summertime, the light right before the sun goes down? You feel my divinity, your love is profound. Your love is profound. Your love is profound. Space between